The constant hum of JFK International Airport faded into white noise as Robert Callahan's world ground to a halt. His Italian leather shoes, usually moving with purpose across polished floors, stood frozen in place. Through the sea of travelers, rushing to their gates, he saw her, Scarlett Amara Hale. 2 years of silence shattered in an instant. She stood in the international departures line, her signature grace unchanged. The morning light streaming through the terminal's massive windows caught the subtle movement of her black hair, now styled in loose waves rather than her once habitual sleek bun. But what made Robert's breath catch wasn't just her presence. It was the baby sleeping peacefully in her arms. A baby who couldn't be more than a year old. His fingers instinctively moved to adjust his shirt cuffs, a nervous habit he'd never managed to break. The iconic Chapter and Brew coffee cup in his other hand suddenly felt unbearably heavy. The empire he'd built, the very reason he'd sacrificed, so much seemed to mock him in this moment of paralysis. Their eyes met across the terminal. Her striking blue gaze, once filled with love, now carried an unreadable calm. In that fleeting connection, Robert felt the weight of every unopened message, every unspoken word, and every moment he'd chosen his company over their relationship. The baby stirred, and Scarlett's attention immediately shifted, her entire being focused on soothing the child with a gentleness that made Robert's chest ache. He watched as she whispered something, her lips curving into a soft smile that once upon a time had been his reason for coming home. 2 years ago, she'd left him, with nothing but a letter. What's the point of being married to someone who isn't there when you need them most? The words had haunted him through countless sleepless nights, through board meetings and store openings, through every empty victory celebration in his penthouse overlooking Manhattan. A businessman brushed past Robert, breaking his trance. By the time he refocused, Scarlett was disappearing into the crowd, the baby's tiny hand visible over her shoulder, waving at nothing in particular. The innocence of the gesture felt like a punch to his gut. The intercom crackled with announcements of departures and arrivals, but Robert stood rooted in place, his mind racing through calculations he'd avoided for 2 years. The timing. The baby's age. The way Scarlett had left without warning, her final words making so much more sense now. "Mr. Callahan?" His assistant's voice barely registered. "The board is waiting for the quarterly presentation." Robert turned to face Madison Chen, his normally unflappable assistant who now looked concerned by his obvious distraction. "Cancel it," he said, his voice rougher than intended. "Cancel everything." "But sir, the projections for the new locations..." "Madison?" He softened his tone, remembering how Scarlett had always urged him to be kinder to his staff. "Please. Something's come up." Madison's fingers flew across her tablet, already rearranging his meticulously planned schedule. "Should I call the car back?" Robert shook his head, his decision crystallizing with every breath. "No. But I need you to find out everything you can about Dr. Scarlett Hale's current work. Last I knew, she was in biomedicine, regenerative therapy. Research. The same Scarlett who..." "Yes." He cut her off, not ready to hear their history spoken aloud. "And Madison?" "Be discreet." As his assistant stepped away to make calls, Robert pulled out his phone, opening the photo gallery he hadn't dared look at in months. There she was, Scarlett on their wedding day, looking at him with those same blue eyes, but filled then with hope and promise. The timestamp mocked him, 3 years and a lifetime ago. Closing the photo, he opened his browser instead, typing Dr. Scarlett Hale research with trembling fingers. The first result made his heart skip. Groundbreaking regenerative. Therapy study launches in Boston. Lead researcher Dr. S.A. Hale. Boston. She was working in Boston. The pieces began falling into place. Her presence at JFK, the baby, the timing. Robert had built his business on calculated risks and strategic planning, but for once in his life, none of that mattered. He knew with a certainty that terrified him that the carefully ordered world he'd created was about to change forever. Because that baby, The child with impossibly familiar blue-gray eyes had to be his son. Madison returned, her expression carefully neutral. Dr. Hale is heading a research team at Massachusetts General Hospital. She's been there for approximately 6 months. Robert nodded, his decision already made. Book me on the next flight, to Boston. And Madison? He paused, looking at the coffee cup still in his hand, the Chapter and Brew logo suddenly seeming like a hollow achievement. Clear my schedule for the next week. All of it. Even the Chicago expansion meeting? Especially that he thought of all the meetings he'd prioritized over quiet moments with Scarlett, all the late nights at the office when she'd needed him most. I'm done letting the important things slip away. As Madison walked away, Robert finally moved from his spot, dropping his untouched coffee in a nearby trash bin. The bitter irony wasn't lost on him. He'd built an empire of cafes dedicated to stories and connections, while his own story had fallen apart, and his most important connection had slipped through his fingers. But maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to write a new chapter. The morning sun streamed through JFK's massive windows, casting long shadows across the terminal floor. Somewhere in the city, his board members were gathering for a meeting he wouldn't attend, and somewhere in Boston, Scarlett was building a life he knew nothing about, raising a child who might be his son. Robert Callahan had spent his entire life believing that success was built on sacrifice. Now, standing in an airport terminal with his world turned upside down, he finally understood what Scarlett had tried to tell him all along. Some sacrifices weren't worth the cost. And it was time to make things right. Scarlett Hale's heels clicked purposefully across Massachusetts General Hospital's research wing, her steps echoing the steady rhythm she'd built into her new life. The morning sun filtered through the laboratory windows, casting golden light across the pristine equipment that had become her sanctuary. Dr. Hale? Dr. Regina Martinez, her research partner, rushed in with a tablet displaying their latest test results. The cellular regeneration rates are exceeding our projections. A smile tugged at Scarlett's lips as she studied the data. This was what she'd fought for. Breakthrough moments like these, validation of countless sleepless nights spent pursuing her dreams. Dreams that had once seemed impossible when she was just Robert Callahan's wife. Send these to the team, Scarlett instructed, her voice carrying the quiet authority she'd developed over the past 2 years. And Regina, you should lead tomorrow's presentation. You've earned it. The younger researcher's eyes widened. But the board specifically requested. They requested results, Scarlett interrupted gently, and you've helped deliver them. Besides, she glanced at her watch, I have a previous commitment. That commitment was waiting at Little Scholar's daycare, probably finger painting or attempting to eat his crayons. Oliver. Her miracle. Their miracle, though Robert didn't know that yet. The thought of Robert sent an unwelcome shiver down her spine. Their chance encounter at JFK 3 days ago had shaken her more than she cared to admit. She'd spent 2 years carefully constructing a life without him, building walls around her heart brick by brick. Now, with one look across a crowded terminal, those walls threatened to crumble. Dr. Hale? Regina's voice pulled her back to the present. Are you okay? Scarlett straightened her lab coat, a gesture that had become her own version of armor. Perfect. Just thinking about the next phase of trials. It wasn't entirely a lie. She was always thinking about next steps, about moving forward. It was how she'd survived the darkness of her mother's death, the suffocating loneliness of her marriage, and the terrifying joy of discovering her pregnancy after she'd already left. The laboratory door opened again, this time revealing Dr. Alexander Chen, the department head. His expression made Scarlett's stomach drop. Scarlett, there's someone in my office asking for you. He paused, his next words confirming her worst fears. Robert Callahan. The test results in her hands suddenly felt impossibly heavy. Of course he'd come. The Robert she knew, the Robert she'd loved, never let anything slip through his fingers once he set his mind to it. It was what had made him brilliant in business and devastating in love. Tell him I'm in the middle of critical research, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. He says he'll wait. Alexander's tone was gentle. And Scarlett, he mentioned Oliver. The world tilted slightly on its axis. She'd known this day would come, had prepared for it, rehearsed it, dreaded it. But nothing could have truly readied her for the reality of Robert discovering their son's existence. I'll handle it, she said, already moving toward her office. Regina, please distribute those results, and Alexander. Give me 10 minutes. Inside her office, Scarlett allowed herself exactly 30 seconds of panic. She stared at the photo on her desk. Oliver on his first birthday, cake smeared across his chubby cheeks, his blue-gray eyes sparkling with joy. Robert's eyes. Her. Phone buzzed with a text from Carmen, Oliver's regular sitter. Little man's down for his nap, still picking him up at 3? Scarlett typed back a quick confirmation, then opened her drawer. Inside lay the letter she'd been carrying for months, updated and rewritten countless times. A letter explaining everything to Robert, if this day ever came. The irony wasn't lost on her. Their relationship had ended with a letter. Perhaps this new chapter would begin with one too. Taking a deep breath, she gathered her thoughts along with the letter. The walk to Alexander's office felt like crossing an ocean. Each step weighted with the consequences of choices made 2 years ago. Robert stood at the window, his silhouette painfully familiar against the Boston skyline. He'd changed his suit since the airport, dark gray now, impeccably tailored as always. Some things never changed. You found me faster than I expected, she said, closing the door behind her. He turned, and the look in his eyes nearly broke her resolve. Gone was the distant businessman she'd left behind. In his place stood a man, haunted by questions she'd have to answer. Why didn't you tell me? His voice was raw, stripped of its usual corporate polish. Scarlett moved to Alexander's desk, placing the letter between them like a shield. The same reason I left the first letter. You weren't there, Robert. You were never there. I had a right to know about my son. Did you? The words escaped. Before she could stop them, years of hurt bubbling to the surface. You had a right to know about my mother's cancer too, but you missed every appointment. You had a right to be there when she died, but you were in Seattle, opening another cafe. Robert flinched as if she'd struck him. I was building a future for us. No. Scarlett's voice softened. You were building a future for yourself. The day I left, do you know what I realized? I couldn't remember the last time we'd had dinner together. The last time you'd asked about my research. The last time you'd really seen me. She pushed the letter toward him. Everything you want to know is in there. Oliver's medical history, his schedule, his favorite books. He loves dogs, classical music, and those little rice puffs that dissolve on his tongue. He's perfect, Robert, and I won't let anyone hurt him, not even his father. Robert picked up the letter with trembling hands. I want to be part of his life. I know. Scarlett moved toward the door, needing space to breathe. But understand this. Being Oliver's father doesn't mean being my husband again. That chapter is closed. Scarlett. Her name on his lips still held power, still made her heart skip. I've changed. She turned back one last time, meeting his gaze steadily. So have I. That's what happens when you learn to choose yourself. She pulled a business card from her lab coat pocket. This is Carmen's number. She watches Oliver while I work. Call her tomorrow at 10. You can meet him then. Thank you, Robert whispered, clutching both the letter and card like lifelines. Don't thank me yet. Scarlett's hand rested on the doorknob. Being a parent isn't like running a company, Robert. You can't delegate the hard parts. You can't reschedule when it gets inconvenient. You have to show up, really show up, every single day. With that, she stepped out, letting the door click shut behind her. The sound echoed with finality, marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Back in her office, Scarlett sank into her chair, allowing herself a moment of vulnerability before her next meeting. On her desk, Oliver's photo seemed to smile encouragingly. Her son, their son, who had somehow inherited both Robert's determined gaze and her resilient spirit. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, she would hold Oliver close, breathe in his baby-sweet scent, and remember that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let go of what was to embrace what could be. The afternoon sun painted long shadows across her research notes, reminding her that time waited for no one. She had a groundbreaking study to complete, a son to raise, and a heart to protect. And somewhere in Boston, Robert Callahan was reading a letter that would change his life forever, just as writing it had changed hers. Robert Callahan had negotiated billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat. But now, standing outside Carmen Rivera's cozy brownstone in Boston's Beacon Hill, his hands trembled as he checked his watch for the 10th time in as many minutes. 9:57 a.m. The letter Scarlett had given him was folded carefully in his breast pocket, its edges worn from countless readings over the past 24 hours. Every detail about Oliver felt precious. His birth weight, 7 pounds 2 ounces, his first word, Mama, his favorite stuffed animal, a gray elephant named Trunks. At exactly 10 a.m., Robert pressed the doorbell. The sound of tiny feet pattering across hardwood floors made his heart race. Carmen opened the door, her warm brown eyes assessing him carefully. She was younger than he'd expected, maybe in her early 30s, with a gentle presence that immediately put him at ease. "Mr. Callahan," she said, stepping aside. Dr. Hale called ahead. "Oliver's just finished his morning snack." Robert stepped into the sunlit living room, transformed into a child's paradise with soft playmats, educational toys, and books everywhere. In the center of it all, seated on a tiny blue chair, was his son. Oliver looked up from his picture book, those familiar blue-gray eyes, his eyes, wide with curiosity. The boy's brown hair fell in soft waves across his forehead, and his cheeks held the same rosy tint Robert remembered from his own childhood photos. "Hi, Oliver," Robert managed, his voice hardly more than a whisper. The boy tilted his head, studying this stranger with an intensity that was pure Scarlet. Then, remarkably, he smiled, a bright, uninhibited expression that made Robert's chest ache. "He's very friendly," Carmen explained, settling onto the floor near Oliver. "Would you like to join us? We were about to read Goodnight Moon." Robert nodded, lowering himself onto the playmat. His tailored suit, worth more than most people's, monthly rent, felt absurdly out of place among the cheerful primary colors and stuffed animals. Oliver held up his book, babbling in a language only he fully understood, though Mama and book were clearly distinguishable. Robert listened intently, treating each incomprehensible word as if it were the most important business proposal he'd ever heard. "He loves stories," Carmen said, smiling at Oliver's enthusiasm. "Dr. Hale reads to him every night no matter how late she gets home." The comment stung, reminding Robert of all the nights he'd missed, all the moments he couldn't get back. But Oliver, oblivious to his father's inner turmoil, scooted closer, pressing the book into Robert's hands with an expectant look. "Would you like me to read it?" Robert asked softly. Oliver responded by climbing into Robert's lap, settling there as if he'd done it 1,000 times before. The trust in that simple gesture nearly undid him. With slightly shaking hands, Robert opened the book. In the great green room there was a telephone and a red balloon. As he read, Oliver pointed at various objects, occasionally looking up at Robert with a grin that seemed to say, "You're doing this right." Carmen quietly excused herself to the kitchen, giving them space to bond. When the story ended, Oliver immediately grabbed another book, and another. Robert lost track of time, lost in the miracle of his son's weight against his chest, the sweet, baby shampoo scent of his hair, the way his tiny fingers traced the pictures on each page. "Bah!" Oliver suddenly exclaimed, pointing to a dog in one of the books. "That's right, that's a dog," Robert agreed, remembering from Scarlett's letter that Oliver loved dogs. "What does a dog say?" "Woof!" Oliver's enthusiastic imitation made Robert laugh, really laugh, for what felt like the first time in years. The morning passed in a blur of books, blocks, and revelations. Oliver showed Robert his favorite toys, including the famous Trunks the elephant. They built towers just so Oliver could knock them down with delighted giggles. Robert learned that his son had Scarlett's determination, evident in the way he kept trying to stack blocks that were clearly too big for his small hands. Around noon, Carmen returned with Oliver's lunch. Robert watched, fascinated, as his son methodically picked up small pieces of chicken and fruit, occasionally offering some to his father with generous open-handedness. "He's good at sharing," Carmen observed, watching them interact. "Dr. Hale says it's important to encourage empathy early." Robert nodded, thinking of how Scarlett had always been the one to remind him about the human side of business, about treating people as more than numbers on a spreadsheet. "She's an amazing mother." "Yes," Carmen agreed, her tone careful. "She's built a beautiful life here. Oliver is the center of her world." The implication was clear. This carefully constructed world didn't have room for disruption, even from a father with good intentions. As if on cue, Oliver began showing signs of tiredness, rubbing his eyes and becoming slightly fussy. Carmen stepped in smoothly. "It's time for his nap." Robert's heart clenched at the thought of leaving, but he knew better than to disrupt Oliver's routine. Standing, he straightened his suit, now slightly wrinkled and sporting a few smears of banana. "Same time Thursday?" he asked Carmen, remembering Scarlett's conditions from the letter, 2 supervised visits per week to start. Carmen nodded, lifting a drowsy Oliver into her arms. "Say bye-bye to Mr. Callahan, Oliver." "Bye-bye," Oliver mumbled, waving his small hand. Robert resisted the urge to reach for him, to hold him one more time. Instead, he waved back, trying to smile through the tightness in his throat. "Goodbye, Oliver. Thank you for sharing your books with me." Outside, Robert made it halfway down the street before he had to stop, leaning against a brick wall as emotions overwhelmed him. He pulled out his phone, opening his calendar app, the same one filled with board meetings and expansion plans that had once seemed so important. With a few taps, he cleared his Thursday morning, then Friday afternoon, then every Monday and Thursday morning for the foreseeable future. Next, he opened his email, typing a message to his executive team. "Effective immediately, I'm restructuring my role. Madison will forward details of the transition plan. All future meetings must end by 5 p.m. EST, no exceptions." Lastly, he pulled up the messaging app, staring at Scarlett's name for a long moment before typing. "Thank you for giving me this chance. He's perfect." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. Finally, "He is. Don't waste this opportunity." Robert. Looking back at Carmen's brownstone, Robert made a silent promise to both his son and his ex-wife. He would not be the man who chose conference calls over bedtime stories, who missed first steps because of shareholder meetings, who put profit margins above precious moments. The autumn breeze carried the scent of approaching rain as Robert walked toward the subway station. His driver had offered to wait, but he'd sent the car away. For once, he wanted to move through the city like a regular person, like a father who had just spent the morning reading stories to his son. In his pocket, Scarlett's letter crinkled with each step, a reminder that second chances come with responsibility. Oliver's face, trusting and bright, was burned into his memory, a new North Star to guide his decisions. Robert Callahan had built an empire on the belief that success required sacrifice. Now, watching raindrops begin to fall on Boston's busy streets, he understood that true success might mean sacrificing the empire instead. Scarlett's laboratory felt different that evening, the familiar hum of equipment unable to drown out her racing thoughts. The clock on the wall read 6:45 p.m., 15 minutes until she needed to pick up Oliver from Carmen's. 15 minutes to compose herself after a day of pretending she wasn't thinking about Robert meeting their son. "These results are promising," Dr. Regina Martinez said, pointing to a graph on her tablet. "The tissue regeneration rates in the latest trials." She paused, noticing Scarlett's distant expression. "You haven't heard a word I've said, have you?" Scarlett smiled apologetically. "I'm sorry, it's been complicated." Regina perched on the edge of the laboratory bench, her dark eyes softening. Carmen texted you about the visit? Several times. Scarlett pulled out her phone, rereading Carmen's messages for the 100th time. Oliver took to him immediately. They read stories for hours. He seems genuinely invested. Each update had felt like a small earthquake, shaking the foundations of the careful life she'd built. And that's bad? Regina asked carefully. Scarlett set down the pipette she'd been fidgeting with. It's complicated. Robert has this way of consuming everything in his orbit. When things matter to him, he throws himself in completely. Like he did with his business? Exactly. Scarlett began organizing her workstation, a habit that helped her think. What happens when Oliver becomes his new project? When he tries to reorganize our lives the way he reorganizes his companies? Regina was quiet for a moment. Maybe that's not fair. People can change. Can they? Scarlett picked up her bag, ready to end the day. 2 years ago, I sat alone in a hospital room while my mother took her last breath. I called him 6 times that day. He was in Seattle, opening a new Chapter and Brew location. The memory still had the power to steal her breath. She'd been holding her mother's hand when the monitors flatlined, watching the only person who'd always been there for her slip away. The doctor had asked if she wanted to call anyone. She'd said no, knowing it wouldn't make a difference. I should go, Scarlett said, checking her watch again. Oliver needs his dinner routine. Regina nodded, but caught her arm gently. Just remember something. The woman who revolutionized tissue regeneration therapy, who raised a baby while leading groundbreaking research. She's strong enough to handle whatever comes next. Scarlett squeezed her friend's hand in thanks before heading out into the cool evening air. The walk to Carmen's usually helped clear her head, but tonight every step seemed to echo with questions she wasn't ready to answer. When she reached the familiar brownstone, she paused at the sight of Oliver's favorite stuffed elephant sitting in the window, accompanied by a new friend, a small plush dog with floppy ears. Carmen opened the door before she could ring the bell. He's just waking up from his afternoon nap. Inside, Oliver's face lit up at the sight of her. Mama! He toddled over, clutching both Trunks and the new dog. Hello, my love. Scarlett scooped him up, breathing in his familiar scent. Who's your new friend? Bah! Oliver thrust the dog toward her face enthusiastically. Carmen smiled. Mr. Callahan brought it. He remembered Oliver's reaction to the dog in the book they read. Together. Something twisted in Scarlett's chest. It was such a small gesture, but so specifically thoughtful. The Robert she'd fallen in love with had been like that, noticing little details, making grand gestures out of tiny moments. He asked about Oliver's routine. Carmen continued, helping, gather Oliver's things. Wanted to know everything, favorite foods, nap schedule, which songs he likes at bedtime. Of course he did, Scarlett murmured, more to herself than Carmen. Robert had always approached new challenges with meticulous attention to detail. It was what made him brilliant at business, and dangerous to her heart. He also left this. Carmen handed her an envelope. Scarlett shifted Oliver to her hip to open it. Inside was a letter, written in Robert's precise handwriting. Scarlett, today I learned that our son loves the color blue, can stack 5 blocks before they topple, and has your exact laugh. I learned that he turns pages from right to left, always pausing to study each picture. That he shares his snacks without being asked, and that he says thank you in his own special way. I know I have no right to ask for more than you've already given, but I'd like to adjust the visitation schedule. Not more time. I understand we need to move slowly, but I'd like to shift Thursday's visit to Wednesday. The board meetings can wait. Oliver shouldn't have to. Robert P.S. I hope the dog is okay. He reminded me of the one in the book. That made Oliver laugh. Scarlett folded the letter carefully, tucking it into her bag. Did he seem different to you? Carmen considered this while helping Oliver into his jacket. He was nervous, terrified actually, but genuine. When Oliver fell and bumped his knee, Mr. Callahan looked like he might cry himself, and he sat on the floor in his expensive suit for hours just reading the same books over and over. Oliver chose that moment to show off his new word. Book. That's right, sweetheart. Scarlett kissed his forehead. Books are the best things in the world. On the walk home, Oliver babbled happily about his day. A mix of real and invented words that painted a picture of stories and playtime and new discoveries. The new stuffed dog, which Oliver had apparently named Ba, was clutched, firmly in one arm while Trunks occupied the other. In their apartment, as Scarlett went through their evening routine, dinner, bath, story time, she found herself studying Oliver's features more closely than usual. The way his eyebrows furrowed in concentration as he tried to feed himself pasta. The determined set of his jaw when building with blocks. So many little pieces of Robert, woven seamlessly into their son's being. Later, after Oliver was asleep, Scarlett curled up on her window seat, pulling out her phone. She stared at Robert's contact information for a long moment before typing, "Wednesday works. Same time." His response came quickly. "Thank you." "Sweet dreams, Oliver." Scarlett smiled despite herself. He hadn't wished her sweet dreams, hadn't presumed that right. Another small detail. Another sign that maybe, just maybe, he really was trying to respect her boundaries. She looked out at the Boston skyline, the city lights twinkling like stars. Somewhere out there, Robert was probably still awake too, perhaps looking at the same lights, thinking about the same little boy. The walls she'd built around her heart were still standing, but maybe, just maybe, it was okay to install a few windows, not for Robert, but for Oliver. For the chance to give their son something she'd never had. Two parents who could put his needs above their own complicated history. Regina's words echoed in her mind. She was strong enough to handle whatever came next. Strong enough to protect her heart while opening her life. Strong enough to be Oliver's mother and her own person, even as Robert found his place in their world. She pulled out her research notes, settling in for an hour of work before bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new boundaries to navigate. But tonight she had formulas to review, theories to prove, and a sleeping toddler who believed in both stuffed elephants and second chances. Robert was halfway through his Wednesday morning visit with Oliver when the storm hit, both literally and figuratively. Rain lashed against Carmen's windows as thunder rolled across Boston's skyline. But it was the phone call that changed everything. "Dr. Hale collapsed in the lab," Carmen said, her face pale as she hung up the phone. "They're taking her to Mass General's emergency room." Robert's world tilted on its axis. Oliver, sensing the tension, clutched his stuffed dog closer. "Mama?" "She'll be okay, buddy," Robert said automatically, even as his mind raced through possibilities. He turned to Carmen. "Who's authorized to take Oliver if something happens?" "Dr. Hale gave me a list. You're on it. She added you last week." Carmen was already gathering Oliver's emergency bag, but the hospital specifically asked for you. Something about being listed as her emergency contact years ago. Robert remembered. They'd never updated the paperwork after the divorce. Another loose end in their unraveled life. "I'll take him," Robert said, scooping up Oliver. "Can you pack his favorite books? And trunks?" Carmen moved efficiently, years of childcare experience evident in her calm crisis management. "Already packed. There's also a change of clothes, snacks, and his medicine in case his allergies act up." Oliver's little arms wrapped around Robert's neck, his face pressed against his father's collar. "Want Mama? We're going to see her right now," Robert promised, his voice steady despite the fear churning in his gut. He'd seen Scarlett in a hospital once before. The day her mother died. The day he wasn't there. Not this time. The rain had intensified by the time they reached his waiting car. Robert secured Oliver in the car seat Carmen had helped install last week, double-checking every strap while his driver Michael held an umbrella over them. "Mass General," Robert instructed, sliding into the back seat beside Oliver. "And Michael? Every safe shortcut you know." As they navigated Boston's rain-slicked streets, Robert divided his attention between his phone and his son. Oliver was unusually quiet, those intelligent eyes watching the rain streak across the windows. "Ba sad?" Oliver asked, patting his stuffed dog. "Ba's just worried about Mama," Robert explained softly. But doctors are helping her. Remember the doctors in your books, with the special white coats? Oliver nodded solemnly. Help Mama better. That's right, buddy. Robert's throat tightened. When had his son gotten so perceptive, so emotionally aware? Another miracle he'd almost missed. At the hospital, Robert carried Oliver through fluorescent-lit corridors, following directions to the emergency department. He found Regina Martinez, pacing in the waiting room, still in her lab coat. Robert. She looked relieved to see him. They're running tests. She was working late again, skipped lunch. Her blood sugar crashed during the afternoon presentation. The familiar guilt rose in Robert's chest. How many meals had Scarlett skipped during their marriage while he worked late? How many times had she pushed herself too hard, trying to balance everything alone? Has she been doing this often? He asked Regina. The research is at a crucial stage. Regina's expression softened as Oliver reached for her. Hey, little man. Your mama's going to be fine. She's just been working too hard trying to change the world. A nurse appeared, clipboard in hand. Family of Scarlett Hale? Here. Robert stepped forward, Oliver secure in his arms. I'm Oliver's father. The nurse nodded. She's asking for both of you. Room 204. Regina squeezed Robert's arm. I'll handle the research team. Just take care of them. Scarlett lay in the hospital bed looking smaller than Robert remembered, an IV drip attached to her arm. Her eyes, fixed immediately on Oliver, relief washing over her face. There's my brave boy, she said, voice weak but warm. Oliver practically lunged from Robert's arms toward his mother. Robert helped him settle carefully beside Scarlett on the bed, mindful of the IV lines. Mama sick? Oliver patted her hand with concern. Mama just forgot to eat her lunch, Scarlett explained, running her fingers through Oliver's hair. Silly Mama. Very silly, Robert couldn't help adding, earning a ghost of a smile from Scarlett. You didn't have to come, she said, but her eyes told a different story. Yes, I did. Robert pulled up a chair. Besides, someone needs to give you the lecture about taking care of yourself. I learned it from you, remember? The memory hung between them, Scarlett forcing him to eat during marathon business meetings, insisting that no deal was worth his health. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Oliver, oblivious to the undercurrents, pulled Ba and Trunks from his bag. Make better, he declared, placing both stuffed animals beside Scarlett. Best medicine ever, Scarlett whispered, kissing his forehead. Robert watched them together, his chest aching with a familiar mixture of love and regret. The doctor wants to keep you overnight for observation. I can take Oliver. No. Fear flashed across Scarlett's face. I've never spent a night away from him. Then we'll stay. The words came naturally. I'll have Michael bring supplies from your apartment. Carmen gave me the spare key for emergencies. Scarlett started to protest, then stopped, looking at Oliver, who had curled up against her side, already drowsy from the day's excitement. Okay, she said finally. But Robert, this doesn't change. I know. He held up a hand. This isn't about us. It's about him. About being the parents he deserves. Hours passed in the small hospital room. Robert worked remotely, rescheduling meetings and delegating decisions. He helped Oliver eat dinner, read stories, and finally settle into an uneasy sleep on the fold-out chair. Around midnight, with Oliver peaceful under a hospital blanket, Scarlett spoke softly. Thank you for being here, for knowing what he needed. Robert looked up from his laptop. I'm learning. Finally. Yes, she agreed, watching their sleeping son. You are. A comfortable silence fell, broken only by the steady beep of monitors and Oliver's soft breathing. Outside, the storm continued, but in this moment, they were sheltered. Not as husband and wife, but as parents finding their way through uncharted territory. Regina said the research is going well, Robert ventured. We're close to something. Revolutionary. Pride crept into Scarlett's voice. Tissue regeneration that could help burn victims, cancer patients. She trailed off, and Robert knew she was thinking of her mother. She'd be proud of you, he said quietly. Of everything you've built. Of him. Scarlett's eyes glistened. I hope so. Oliver stirred in his sleep, clutching Ba closer. Both parents watched, hearts full of different but equally powerful loves. Scarlett? Robert's voice was barely a whisper. I know things can't go back. I don't expect them to, but maybe they can go forward in whatever way works for him. She studied him in the dim light, seeing not the polished businessman who had chosen ambition over love, but the father who had sat in rain-soaked traffic holding their son's hand, who had brought stuffed animals and favorite books, who was, finally, learning to be present. Maybe, she conceded, one day at a time. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. But as the storm raged outside and their son slept peacefully between them, it felt like something equally precious. A beginning. Boston's autumn painted the streets in amber and gold as Scarlett made her way through the hospital's revolving doors, Robert following with Oliver in his arms. The morning light caught the remnants of last night's storm in puddles and droplets, making the world seem newly washed. I can carry him, Scarlett insisted for the third time, though her voice still held the weakness that had kept her hospitalized overnight. You can barely carry your purse, Robert countered, adjusting Oliver's sleeping weight against his shoulder. Doctor's orders were clear, rest for 48 hours. They reached Robert's waiting car where Michael stood ready with an umbrella, though the rain had long since passed. Scarlett noticed a new car seat installed behind the driver's side, not the temporary one from yesterday, but a high-end model, in Oliver's favorite shade of blue. When did you? This morning, Robert answered, carefully transferring Oliver without waking him. Had it delivered at dawn. The reviews said it's the safest on the market. Of course, he'd researched car seats at dawn. He was still Robert Callahan, after all, the man who approached every challenge like a business proposition requiring thorough analysis. But he was also something else now, something evident in the gentle way he secured Oliver's straps, in how he'd remembered to bring Ba and trunks from the hospital room, in the quiet efficiency with which he'd managed their son's needs while Scarlett recovered. I can take a cab home, she offered weakly. Robert's expression shifted to one she recognized, from their marriage, the look that meant he was trying very hard not to roll his eyes. Get in the car, Scarlett. She did, if only because arguing required energy she didn't have. The leather seats were heated, and classical music played softly, Debussy's Clair de Lune, Oliver's favorite naptime melody. Another detail Robert had apparently filed away. As they drove through Boston's morning traffic, Scarlett found herself studying Robert's profile. He'd changed into a fresh suit sometime during the night, but exhaustion lined his face. Had he slept at all? Regina called, he said, keeping his voice low to avoid waking Oliver. She's handling the research presentation. Said to tell you, the board was impressed with the preliminary results even without your final remarks. I should call her. Already thanked her and rescheduled your meetings for next week. He glanced at her. Your team cares about you, Scarlett. They want you to rest. The car stopped at a red light and Oliver stirred slightly, mumbling something about books in his sleep. Both parents held their breath until he settled again. You don't have to do all this, Scarlett said finally. I know. Robert's fingers drummed once on his knee, an old tell of his, meaning he was choosing his words carefully. But I want to. Not because I'm trying to. I just want to help. As Oliver's father. As your friend, if you'll let me be that. Friend? The word hung between them, both more and less than what they'd been to each other. You've changed, she observed. Had to. His smile held a touch of sadness. Someone once told me that being a parent means showing up every day. No delegating. The hard parts. She recognized her own words from the hospital, thrown back at him that day in Alexander's office. Before she could respond, the car pulled up to her apartment building. I can take him up, Robert began. Actually, Scarlett interrupted, surprising herself. Would you mind staying? Just until he wakes up. He might be confused after the hospital. Relief flickered across Robert's face. Of course. Upstairs, Robert laid Oliver in his bed while Scarlett changed into comfortable clothes. When she emerged from her room, she found Robert in the kitchen, efficiently unpacking bags she hadn't noticed him bringing in. Carmen mentioned you were running low on groceries, he explained, storing containers in her refrigerator. I had Michael stop at Whole Foods while you were being discharged, and before you protest, he held up a hand. This is just meal prep. Regina said you've been skipping lunches. You and Regina seem to have gotten quite chatty, Scarlett observed, sinking into a kitchen chair. She cares about you and Oliver. Robert moved through her kitchen with surprising familiarity, finding plates and utensils. She told me about the research you're doing, about how it could help people like your mother if you'd had it then. Scarlett's throat tightened. Robert, I should have been there. He stopped organizing, gripping the counter's edge. When she was sick, when she died, you called 6 times that day. 7, she corrected softly. 7. He turned to face her, and the raw honesty in his expression made her heart stutter. I was standing in a new chapter in Brew location arguing about the placement of coffee machines while you were saying goodbye to your mother alone. I'll never forgive myself for that. Before Scarlett could respond, a small voice called from the bedroom. Mama? Dada? They found Oliver sitting up in bed, hair mussed from sleep, clutching Ba and Trunks. His face lit up at the sight of them both. Mama better? He asked, reaching for Scarlett. She sat on the edge of his bed, letting him crawl into her lap. Much better, sweetheart. Thanks to you and Dada. The word felt strange on her tongue. They hadn't discussed what Oliver would call Robert. But watching their son's face brighten at the term, seeing Robert's careful mask crack with emotion, she knew it was right. How about some breakfast? Robert suggested, his voice slightly rough. I bought those rice puffs you love. Oliver clapped his hands. Yes, Ba hungry too. They ended up in the kitchen, Oliver in his high chair while Robert prepared a breakfast that proved he'd been paying attention to their son's preferences. Rice puffs arranged in a smiley face, banana slices cut exactly the right size. Even Scarlett's coffee appeared, prepared the way she'd always taken it, splash of cream, cinnamon on top. You remembered, she said, surprised. I remember everything. Robert handed Oliver his sippy cup. I just didn't show it before. Didn't think I had to because work was more important. I was an idiot. Yes, Scarlett agreed, but without bitterness. You were. But maybe that's not who you are anymore. Oliver chose that moment to offer Ba a rice puff, then Trunks, then each of his parents in turn. They accepted the slightly soggy offerings solemnly, this communion of shared snacks and new beginnings. Later, after Oliver was settled with his toys and Robert had cleaned up breakfast, ignoring all of Scarlett's protests, they sat on her small balcony. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of changing seasons. I'm not trying to win you, Ack, Robert said suddenly. I need you to know that. I understand what I lost and why, but I'd like to be better at this, at being his father, at being someone you can trust with him, at being your friend. Scarlett watched a leaf spiral down from a nearby tree. I'd like that too, she said finally. The friendship part, the co-parenting part. But Robert? She met his gaze steadily. It has to be real, not just another project you'll eventually delegate. It is real. He pulled out his phone, showing her his calendar. Every Monday and Wednesday morning was blocked off in blue. Oliver time. Every Thursday evening. Co-parent check-in. The question mark at the end was so un-Robert-like, so tentative, that Scarlett felt something in her chest soften. Thursdays. Work, she said. We should discuss his schedule, his development. Regina mentioned there's a good pediatrician near the lab. Robert smiled, and for a moment, Scarlett glimpsed the man she'd first fallen in love with, the one who lit up at new challenges, who cared deeply beneath his polished exterior. But they weren't those people anymore. They were something else now. Two adults learning to put their child first, to build something new from the ashes of what was lost. Inside, Oliver's laugh rang out, bright and clear and full of possibility. Like the autumn air, like new beginnings, like hope. Robert stared at his phone, reading the email for the third time. The chapter and brew board wanted an emergency meeting in Seattle, tomorrow. His carefully structured world of morning visits and Thursday check-ins threatened to unravel with a single notification. Through his office window, Boston's skyline glittered in the late afternoon sun. He'd moved his entire operation here, renting temporary office space and managing remotely, all to be near Oliver. Now, 6 weeks into their new routine, the past was calling. His phone buzzed, a video message from Carmen. Oliver, wearing his favorite blue sweater, waved at the camera. "Hi, Dada. Look." The toddler proudly held up a finger painting, abstract swirls of blue and green that made Robert's heart ache. Tomorrow was Wednesday. Oliver time. Robert's fingers hovered over Scarlett's contact. They'd built a fragile trust over the past weeks. Their Thursday conversations had evolved from awkward exchanges to genuine discussions about Oliver's development. Last week, she'd even laughed at one of his jokes. A real laugh, not the polite one she'd used in the last years of their marriage. But this would be the first real test of his commitment. He pressed call. "Robert?" Scarlett answered on the second ring. "Everything okay?" "There's an emergency board meeting in Seattle tomorrow morning." He said it quickly, like ripping off a bandage. The venture capital group is threatening to pull funding over the international expansion delays. Silence stretched between them. He could almost see her expression, the careful mask she wore when processing disappointment. "I see," she said finally. "And you're calling to tell you I'm not going." The words came easily, surprising them both. "I'll handle it virtually. Oliver's expecting me tomorrow." More silence. Then, "Robert, this is your company. And Oliver is my son." He leaned back in his chair, suddenly certain. "The board can either accept that I'm a father now or they can find a new CEO." "You don't mean that." "I do." He smiled, though she couldn't see it. "Besides, Oliver's showing real talent with finger paints. Can't miss his artistic development." A small laugh escaped her. "Carmen sent you the video? He's definitely not getting his artistic skills from me." "No," she agreed, warmth creeping into her voice. "That's all him. He's been asking when you're coming. He saves his paintings for you now." Robert's chest tightened. "I'll be there. 9 a.m. sharp, like always." "Robert?" Scarlett's tone shifted, became more serious. "What you're doing, choosing him, it matters. More than you know." After they hung up, Robert turned to his laptop, drafting an email to the board. Professional, but firm. He would attend virtually or they could reschedule. Non-negotiable. His phone buzzed again. Another video from Carmen. This time, Oliver was reading to Ba and Trunks, making up a story about a brave dog who loved coffee shops. Robert played it 3 times, memorizing every detail of his son's imagination. The next morning, Robert arrived at Carmen's 5 minutes early, a laptop tucked under his arm. "Board meeting?" Carmen asked, noting his formal attire. "In between. Story time and snacks." He smiled. "Oliver's schedule takes priority." Inside, Oliver launched himself at Robert with his usual enthusiasm. "Dada, see paintings." For the next hour, Robert sat on the floor in his $1,000 suit, admiring every colorful creation while his phone buzzed with meeting notifications. Oliver proudly explained each masterpiece, his vocabulary growing more impressive by the day. At 10:30, Carmen helped set up Robert's laptop in the kitchen while Oliver had his snack. The board members' faces appeared on screen, their expressions ranging from annoyed to resigned. "Gentlemen," Robert began, but a small voice interrupted. "Dada, Ba wants rice puff." The board members' eyebrows rose collectively as Robert turned away from the camera. Just one, buddy. Remember to share with Trunks. When he turned back, something had shifted in the virtual room. The CEO of Boston Capital was smiling. My grandson's about that age, he said. Never shuts up during Zoom calls either. The tension broke. They discussed the funding crisis, found solutions that didn't involve immediate travel. Robert participated fully while helping Oliver stack blocks and prevent Ba from eating too many rice puffs. By noon, when Scarlett arrived for her lunch visit, another new routine they'd established, the crisis was resolved. She found Robert and Oliver on the floor, surrounded by toys and corporate documents. Mama, Oliver ran to her. Dada did meeting. Ba helped. Scarlett took in the scene. Robert's slightly rumpled suit, the laptop showing post-meeting graphs, their son's proud face. Successful meeting? Very. Robert stood straightening his tie. Though Ba drives a hard bargain, had to promise 3 stories before he'd approve the Asia-Pacific expansion. A real smile spread across Scarlett's face. Sounds like someone inherited your negotiation skills. God help us all. Robert laughed, gathering his things. At the door he paused. Scarlett, thank you for trusting me with him. She nodded, understanding all he wasn't saying. You're proving worthy of that trust. Every day. That evening, after another board call and countless emails, Robert sat in his temporary apartment reviewing Oliver's schedule for the next week. His phone lit up with a message from Scarlett. Oliver asked to put today's painting on the fridge. He says it's you, him, and Ba having a meeting. Attached was a photo of a gloriously chaotic swirl of colors, 3 vaguely circular shapes prominent in the center. Robert studied it, seeing past the childish strokes to what it represented, his son's view of their new normal. He saved the photo, then opened his calendar. The Seattle office had been asking about his return for weeks. Looking at Oliver's artwork, at the blocks of time marked Oliver time and co-parent check-in, he made another decision. The Boston office space wasn't temporary anymore. He'd find a permanent location tomorrow. His phone buzzed one last time. Another. Video from Carmen. Oliver, getting ready to leave, waved at the camera. Bye, Dada. Love you. Robert played it again and again, each time more certain. No corporate crisis would ever be worth missing these moments. He was finally learning what success really meant, and it had nothing to do with coffee shops or board meetings. It was measured in finger paintings, rice puffs, and the trust in his son's eyes when he said, Dada, in Scarlett's growing belief that he could be the father Oliver deserved, in the simple joy of choosing what really mattered. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new balances to strike. But tonight, Robert Callahan, CEO, father, work in progress, was exactly where he needed to be. Even if his best suit now sparkled with a hint of blue finger paint, Scarlett knew something was wrong the moment she walked into her laboratory. Regina stood by the main workstation, her face ashen, holding a printout that trembled slightly in her hands. The control samples are contaminated, Regina said without preamble. All of them. The entire last phase of trials. No. Scarlett moved to the computer, pulling up their research data. That's not possible. We followed every protocol, every safety measure. It was the new refrigeration unit. Regina's voice cracked. The temperature fluctuated overnight. 3 months of work, Scarlett. The board presentation is in 2 days. The implications hit like physical blows. Their breakthrough research, the treatment that could help thousands, the legacy she was building in her mother's memory, all of it threatened by a faulty piece of equipment. Her phone buzzed. Carmen sending the usual morning photo of Oliver. He was wearing the new sweater Robert had brought him, proudly showing off a tower of blocks. The sight, normally a source of joy, now twisted her stomach into knots. She had 2 days to salvage 3 months of research. Oliver had his first pediatrician appointment with Robert tomorrow, their first major co-parenting milestone. Call everyone in, Scarlett decided. We're running new trials. Now. Hours blurred together. The research team worked with desperate efficiency, repeating experiments, analyzing data, searching for any salvageable results. Scarlett's phone accumulated missed calls from Carmen, then from Robert. At 7 p.m., Regina touched her arm. "Scarlett? It's Oliver's bedtime." Reality crashed back. She'd missed dinner, missed bath time, missed everything. Her hands shook as she picked up her phone, finding a string of concerned messages. From Carmen. "Oliver's asking for you. Robert offered to stay until you arrive." From Robert. "Take your time. We've got him. He's safe." From Robert again, an hour later. "Read him 3 stories. He's worried about you." The latest one from minutes ago. "He's asleep now. I'll stay until you're home." Guilt warred with necessity. The research needed her, but so did her son. "Go," Regina said softly. "The samples will be here tomorrow." The drive home felt endless. Scarlett's mind raced between molecular structures and Oliver's bedtime routine, between grant requirements and the sound of her son's laugh. She found Robert in her living room, working quietly on his laptop. He looked up as she entered, and something in his expression, understanding without judgment, made her defenses crumble. "The research," she started, but her voice broke. "I know." He stood, offering her a cup of her favorite tea. "Carmen told me about the equipment failure. Oliver helped me make this for you before bed." Scarlett sank onto the couch, cradling the cup. "I promised myself I'd never put work before him, that I'd be different from—" She trailed off. "From me?" Robert sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "Scarlett, you missed one night. One. And you know what Oliver said when I explained Mama had to help sick people? He said, 'Mama's smart, Mama help. He's proud of you.'" Tears threatened. "He said that?" "He did. Right before making me read Good Night Moon twice." Robert's smile was gentle. "The difference is you're not alone this time. He has both of us now." As if summoned by their conversation, a small voice called from the bedroom. "Mama?" They found Oliver sitting up in bed, clutching Ba and Trunks. His face lit up at the sight of Scarlett, arms reaching for her instantly. "I'm sorry I'm late, sweetheart," she whispered, holding him close. "It's okay." Oliver patted her cheek. "Dada said helping people, like doctors in books." Robert lingered in the doorway, watching them with an expression that made Scarlett's heart twist, not with romantic love, but with something equally powerful. Gratitude, understanding, respect. "Want both," Oliver declared suddenly, patting the bed on either side of him. They exchanged glances, then carefully arranged themselves on the small bed, Oliver in the middle, Ba and Trunks serving as pillows. "One story?" Oliver asked hopefully. "One," Scarlett agreed, reaching for his favorite book. But Oliver shook his head. "Dada and Mama story, about helping people." Robert met Scarlett's eyes over their son's head. "Well," he began, "once there was a very smart doctor who worked very hard to make sick people feel better. Together they wove a story about research and healing, about teamwork and perseverance." Oliver drifted off halfway through, but they finished it anyway, their voices blending in the dim room. When they were sure he was asleep, they carefully extracted themselves. In the living room, Robert gathered his things while Scarlett hugged herself, fighting exhaustion. The pediatrician appointment, she remembered suddenly. Tomorrow at 10. "I should cancel." "I'll take him," Robert said. "You focus on the research. I'll record everything, take detailed notes. We can video chat during if you want." "Robert, let me do this." His voice was firm but kind. "You trusted me with him today. Trust me tomorrow too." Looking at him, really looking, Scarlett saw not the workaholic who had missed her mother's final days, but a father who had spent hours soothing their son's worries, who had stayed late to ensure she found Oliver safe and calm. "Okay," she said finally. "But I want updates. And if his allergies..." I have his EpiPen, antihistamines, and the list of all known triggers. Robert smiled. I might have memorized his entire medical history. Of course you did. She found herself smiling back. Thank you for being here today, for understanding. Always. He paused at the door. Scarlett, you're nothing like I was. You're not choosing work over him. You're showing him that helping others matters, that his mother is changing the world. After he left, Scarlett checked on Oliver one more time. He slept peacefully, Ba and Trunk standing guard. On his dresser sat the block tower from this morning's photo, still standing, a testament to persistence, to balance, to building something that lasts. Her phone buzzed with a message from Regina. Breakthrough with the backup samples, there's hope. Scarlett smiled, hope blooming in her chest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, research to salvage, a board to face, a world to change. But tonight had brought something equally valuable, proof that she wasn't alone anymore. That sometimes, breaking points don't break you. They just show you how strong your foundation has become. The Massachusetts General Hospital cafeteria buzzed with morning activity, but Robert barely noticed. His attention was fixed on Oliver, who sat in a booster seat between him and Scarlett, happily munching on crackers while they waited for Dr. Chen's test results. What had started as a routine morning, Robert arriving for his regular Wednesday visit, had turned terrifying when Oliver's face began swelling during breakfast. One bite of a new brand of cereal, and their world tilted on its axis. He's had wheat before, Scarlett murmured, more to herself than Robert. Her fingers kept brushing Oliver's curls, as if reassuring herself he was still there. I don't understand how. Cross-contamination, Robert supplied, remembering his late night research into food allergies. Dr. Chen mentioned it could be processed in a facility that handles other allergens. Oliver offered them each a slightly crushed cracker, oblivious to their worry now that the emergency medications had taken effect. The swelling had gone down, but the fear lingered in both parents' eyes. Mama work today? Oliver asked, patting Scarlett's hand with crumb-covered fingers. No, sweetheart, Mama's staying with you. But the board presentation? Robert said quietly. Your research can wait. Scarlett's voice held no room for argument. Robert studied her face, the determination in her jaw, the worry in her eyes. She'd worked months for this presentation, rebuilding everything after the refrigeration crisis. The board was flying in specifically to hear her findings. What if, he started carefully, we both stay? I can have Madison reschedule my meetings, and we could. A notification chimed on Scarlett's phone. Regina, with an urgent update about the presentation. Simultaneously, Robert's phone lit up with messages about a crisis at the Seattle flagship store. Oliver, sensing the tension, clutched Ba closer. Story time? Before either parent could respond, Dr. Alexander Chen approached their table, tablet in hand. His expression gave nothing away. We have the results, he said, pulling up a chair. The good news is this reaction wasn't as severe as it could have been. You both acted quickly, which made all the difference. And the bad news? Robert asked, reaching for Scarlett's hand without thinking. She gripped back, neither acknowledging the instinctive gesture. We found multiple new sensitivities developing. It's not uncommon at his age, but it means we need to be more vigilant. I'd like to run comprehensive allergy panels, update his emergency protocols. Oliver chose that moment to sneeze, making them all jump. He giggled at their reaction, offering Ba a cracker as consolation. How soon? Scarlett's scientist mind was already calculating, planning. Today, ideally. The labs are ready and, given the severity of this reaction, do it, Robert and Scarlett said simultaneously. Dr. Chen smiled slightly. I'll have the nurses prep everything. The test will take several hours and we'll need to monitor him afterward. One parent can. We're both staying, Robert interrupted. He turned to Scarlett. I'll have Madison handle the Seattle situation. And Regina can. The presentation. Scarlett's face paled. Regina can't. The board specifically requested, they're only here because you're revolutionizing tissue regeneration therapy, Robert finished. Because you're brilliant and they know it. He squeezed her hand. Go, give the presentation. I've got him. Robert, I'll video call you between every test. I'll take detailed notes. I'll have Dr. Chen explain everything twice. His voice softened. Trust me, Scarlett. Like I trust you to change the world. Oliver patted their joined hands. Mama help people, like Story. Scarlett's eyes filled with tears as she looked at their son. So brave, so understanding, so perfectly them. You're sure? Positive. Robert released her hand to pull out his phone. I'm texting Carmen now. She'll bring Oliver's comfort items from home. I'm canceling everything else, and... He smiled at Oliver. I think I remember all the words to Goodnight Moon by heart now. Green room, Oliver supplied helpfully. That's right, buddy, and the great green room had a... Telephone, Oliver clapped. Dr. Chen cleared his throat. Gently. We should start the preparations, Mrs. Dr. Hale. Will you be going to change medicine forever? Robert finished. While I keep our son safe. He met Scarlett's gaze. We're both exactly where we need to be. The next hours passed in a blur of activity. Scarlett rushed to her presentation, after kissing Oliver countless times, making Robert promise to call if anything changed. Robert settled into the pediatric testing area, turning an uncomfortable medical chair into Storytime Central. Between tests, he sent Scarlett updates. First panel done, he's being so brave. Napped through the blood draw, Boss stood guard. Carmen brought his favorite pajamas, blue with dogs. Sang Twinkle Twinkle 15 times. Nurses love him. Her responses came between presentation segments. Board seems impressed, thinking of him. Regina says hi. Show him the video I sent. Tell him Mama's proud. Almost done. How is he? Around 4, as Oliver dozed in the hospital bed surrounded by trunks and a growing collection of pictures he'd drawn for the nurses, Robert's phone lit up with Scarlett's call. They want to fund the next phase, she said without preamble. Full backing, triple the resources, they're calling it revolutionary. Of course they are. Robert smiled, watching Oliver sleep. You're changing the world, remember? How is he, really? Exhausted but stable. Dr. Chen says we'll have full results tomorrow, but the immediate tests show nothing life-threatening. We just need to be more careful, more prepared. A pause, then. We. You said we. Yes. Robert adjusted Oliver's blanket. We're his parents. Partners in this, if nothing else. Another pause, longer this time. I'm leaving now. Traffic's bad, but we'll be here. Robert touched Oliver's hand gently. Take your time. Save the world. He's safe with me. After they hung up, Robert leaned back in his chair, watching his son's peaceful face. On the bedside table, Oliver's latest drawing showed 3 figures, one with a doctor's coat, one with a coffee cup, and one small figure between them, surrounded by what looked like hearts. Or maybe they were coffee beans. Oliver's artistic vision sometimes required interpretation. The hospital corridors grew quieter as evening approached. Nurses came and went, checking vitals, praising Oliver's bravery. Robert answered work emails, one-handed, his other hand holding his son's. Finally, well after sunset, familiar footsteps approached. Mama. Oliver's tired face lit up as Scarlett entered, still in her presentation clothes but somehow looking more energized than when she'd left. My brave boy. She kissed his forehead, then surprised Robert by squeezing his shoulder. Both my brave boys. They sat together in the dim room sharing stories of their day. Scarlett's triumph, Oliver's courage, Robert's endless renditions of favorite books. Outside, Boston's lights twinkled like stars, a reminder that some days change everything. Not by ending what was, but by revealing what could be. Mama and Dada stay? Oliver asked sleepily, clutching Ba. Robert met Scarlett's eyes over their son's head. In her gaze, he saw not the love they'd lost, but the deeper bond they'd found. Two people who'd learned to put someone else's happiness first. Yes, they answered together. We'll both stay. And they did. 1 year later, the autumn breeze carried the scent of coffee and fresh pastries through Boston's public garden as Scarlett watched Oliver chase falling leaves. At 2.5, he was all energy and curiosity, stopping every few steps to examine something new, a squirrel, a flower, a particularly interesting stick. Mama, look. He held up a red maple leaf nearly as big as his face. For lab, Scarlett smiled, remembering how he'd started collecting samples after visiting her research facility last week. Perfect specimen, Dr. Oliver. Should we show Dada? Oliver nodded enthusiastically, carefully placing the leaf in his little backpack, royal blue with a microscope pattern, a joint gift from both parents for his half-birthday. Ba and Trunks peeked out from the top, permanent companions on all adventures. They found Robert at their usual spot, a quiet corner of the newly opened Chapter and Brew, Boston's flagship location. He'd designed this branch differently from all others, with a special children's section filled with scientific picture books and comfortable reading nooks. Dada! Oliver launched himself at his father, who caught him expertly despite the laptop open on the table. Got samples. Real scientists always collect data, Robert agreed solemnly, helping Oliver arrange his leaf collection. Should we document our findings? Scarlett settled into her usual chair, accepting the cinnamon-topped coffee Robert pushed her way. These Sunday morning meetings, their new tradition, had become something she looked forward to. A time to plan Oliver's week, share updates, and simply exist together as an unconventional but functional family. The allergy specialist called, she said, watching Robert help Oliver sort leaves by color. Oliver's latest tests show improvement. We can try introducing new foods soon under supervision. That's fantastic. Robert's face lit up with the same joy she felt. We should celebrate. Maybe that children's science museum he's been asking about. Museum? Oliver clapped, then turned serious. Ba and Trunks too? Of course. Scarlett brushed a leaf from his curls. They're junior scientists now. Robert's phone buzzed. The Seattle office probably, but he didn't even glance at it. Instead, he helped Oliver draw a simple chart of his leaf collection, adding little scientific notes in the margins. Watching them together, Scarlett felt the familiar warmth in her chest. Not the passionate love she'd once felt for Robert, but something equally powerful. Gratitude for the father he'd become, pride in the co-parent he'd grown into. Dr. Martinez said the trial results are exceeding expectations, Robert mentioned, carefully coloring a leaf diagram green at Oliver's insistence. The hospital board is talking about naming the new research wing after your mother. Scarlett's breath caught. How did you? I might have made some calls. He looked up, his expression soft. She deserved to be remembered, and you deserve to be recognized. Before she could respond, Oliver tugged at her sleeve. Mama, tell story about Grandma, the helping people one? They exchanged glances, remembering that night in the hospital a year ago, when they'd first created that story together. Now it was Oliver's favorite, a tale of science and hope and never giving up. Well, Scarlett began, pulling Oliver onto her lap. Once there was a very special doctor who believed in helping people. Robert joined in at the familiar parts, their voices blending as they told their son about his grandmother's kindness, about his mother's determination to continue her legacy, about the importance of being there for others. Oliver listened with his usual intensity, adding his own commentary about doctors and microscopes, and the importance of sharing snacks with Putty. As they finished, a young woman approached their table hesitantly. Mr. Callahan, Dr. Hale, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm one of the trial participants. She rolled up her sleeve, showing healing tissue where burn scars had been. Thank you, both of you, for everything you've built. After she Left Robert reached across the table, squeezing Scarlett's hand briefly. A gesture of support, of shared pride, not in themselves, but in what they'd created together. Not just the research or the coffee shops, but something far more precious. Ice cream? Oliver suggested, scientific investigation forgotten at the prospect of dessert. After lunch, they answered in unison, then laughed at their parental synchronization. Speaking of lunch, Robert said, I had an idea for Thanksgiving. Not together, but maybe we could both come to Carmen's. She's hosting a gathering for families she works with. Oliver would have all his friends there, and we could be there for him, Scarlett finished. Together but separate, I'd like that. Oliver, sensing decisions being made, looked between them hopefully. Ba and Trunks, too? The whole scientific team, Robert assured him, starting to pack up Oliver's leaf collection with meticulous care. Later, as they walked through the public garden one last time before parting ways, Oliver between them holding both their hands, Scarlett thought about endings and beginnings. About how sometimes the happiest ending isn't getting back together, but growing into better people apart. Mama? Oliver pointed to a flowering bush, still blooming despite the autumn chill. Why flowers not sleeping for winter? Some things bloom in their own time, she explained, catching Robert's eye over their son's head. Some things grow stronger through challenges. Like Mama's medicine? Oliver asked. Like Dada's stories? Like you, Robert said softly. Like all of us. They reached their usual parting spot, the bridge over the lagoon. Oliver hugged Robert tightly, their goodbye ritual well practiced now. See you Wednesday, buddy, Robert said. Save some scientific discoveries for me. And Ba? Oliver asked seriously. And Ba, Robert confirmed. And Trunks. The whole research team. As Robert walked toward his office and Scarlett led Oliver home for lunch, she reflected on the path that had brought them here. Not to the love story she'd once imagined, but to something equally valuable. Two people who'd learned to put their child first, who'd grown into the best versions of themselves, who'd found a way to be family without being together. Oliver skipped beside her, chattering about leaves and science and ice cream, his backpack bouncing with each step. Ba and Trunks watched the world go by, silent witnesses to this new kind of love story, one where happy endings come in different shapes, where healing happens in its own time, where some bonds grow stronger not through romance but through the quiet courage of choosing what's right. Love you, Mama, Oliver said suddenly, for no particular reason except that he felt it. Love you too, sweetheart. She scooped him up, breathing in his familiar scent. To the moon and back. And to Seattle? He asked innocently, making her laugh. Even to Seattle, she agreed, thinking of how far they'd all come. Even there, above them, leaves danced in the autumn breeze, red and gold and full of possibility. Like endings that become beginnings. Like love that transforms rather than fades. Like the perfect, unexpected joy of finding your way home. Not to where you started, but to where you were always meant to be. 5 years later, the Harvard Medical School auditorium buzzed with anticipation as 7-year-old Oliver Hale Callahan adjusted his bow tie in the front row. Next to him, Ba and Trunks, worn with love but still faithful companions, sat propped against his backpack, wearing tiny bow ties of their own. Stop fidgeting, Robert whispered, smoothing his son's unruly curls. Your mom's about to start. Oliver grinned, revealing a missing front tooth. I helped with her speech, Dada. Added the part about the microscopes. Of course you did, Professor Oliver. Robert smiled, remembering how his son had insisted on peer-reviewing Scarlett's acceptance speech for the Pioneer in Medical Research Award. The lights dimmed, and Dr. Alexander Chen approached the podium. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Scarlett Hale. Her groundbreaking work in regenerative therapy has not only revolutionized treatment for burn victims and cancer patients, but has also set new standards in medical research. Oliver bounced in his seat as Scarlett took the stage. She wore her favorite blue blazer, the same shade as their son's eyes, and the quiet confidence of someone who had found her true path. 7 years ago, she began, I sat beside my mother's hospital bed making her a promise, not just to continue her legacy of healing, but to build something meaningful from loss. Her eyes found Oliver in the crowd and her smile softened. What I didn't know then was that sometimes our greatest breakthroughs come from unexpected places, from learning to trust, from letting love take new shapes, from seeing the world through a child's eyes. Robert felt Oliver slip his small hand into his, a gesture their son still made when especially proud or moved. On Oliver's other side, Carmen, now the director of Little Scholars Daycare and an honorary family member, dabbed at her eyes. Scarlett continued, describing the research that had changed countless lives. In the slides behind her, Robert recognized photos from their journey. The original lab where it all began, the team that had become family, and, in a particularly moving moment, a photo of Oliver at age 3 wearing a tiny lab coat as he assisted with his mother's research. Science teaches us that transformation is rarely linear, Scarlett concluded, that healing follows its own timeline, that sometimes the most beautiful results come from embracing change rather than fighting it. She paused, meeting Robert's eyes briefly. I share this award with my incredible team at Mass General, with every patient who trusted us with their healing journey, and most importantly, with my son, my brilliant boy who taught me that love, like science, can evolve into something even more extraordinary than we imagined. The applause was thunderous. Oliver stood on his chair cheering, "That's my mama," while Robert lifted him down, fighting his own emotion. Later, at the small celebration in Scarlett's lab, Oliver held court among the research team, explaining his latest experiments to an indulgent audience. Ba and Trunk sat on a lab bench wearing safety goggles, overseeing the proceedings. "He's definitely your son," Robert said, joining Scarlett by the window. "I heard him explaining molecular structure to his class last week." "With coffee shop analogies," Scarlett laughed. "That's all you." They watched their son demonstrate something involving his juice box and 3 pipettes, his bow tie now charmingly askew. "Regina's offering me partnership in the research facility," Scarlett said quietly. "And I heard the Seattle branch is asking for you again." "They'll keep asking." Robert sipped his coffee, cinnamon-topped, the way they both still took it. "But Oliver's school is here, his friends, his activities, his whole world. Besides," he smiled, "someone has to keep the Boston chapter in Brew stocked with science books." Scarlett touched the award plaque gently. "We did good, didn't we? Not us, as us, but this version of us. We did great." Robert watched Oliver carefully pack up Ba and Trunks, ensuring their safety gear was properly stored. "He's happy, secure, loved beyond measure. That's better than any ending I could have written." "Speaking of writing," Scarlett hesitated, "Oliver showed me the book you've been working on together. The Science of Love, a story about different kinds of families." Robert flushed slightly. It was his idea. He said other kids should know that sometimes love gets bigger by changing shape, like his favorite experiments. "He's 7 going on 40, Scarlett said fondly. "But he's right." Oliver bounded over, lab coat flapping. "Mama, Dada, Dr. Regina says I can use the big microscope next week if you both come. Please, Ba needs to document our findings." They exchanged glances, years of co-parenting allowing silent communication. "We'll both be there," they promised. "With proper safety protocols," Robert added. "And detailed hypotheses," Scarlett finished. Oliver beamed, pure joy radiating from his face. Best research team ever. Later that night, after Oliver was safely home with Scarlett, Robert sat in his office at the Boston chapter in Brew. On his desk sat a framed photo. Oliver's first day of 2nd grade, standing between his parents, Ba and Trunks, peeking out of his backpack, all of them smiling, genuine and bright. His phone buzzed with Scarlett's nightly update. "Oliver says your chapter needs more scientific accuracy. Also, Bia and Trunks send peer review notes." Robert smiled, typing back, "Tell our resident expert his input is always valued." Sweet dreams. Professor Oliver. Outside, Boston's lights twinkled against the dark sky. Somewhere in the city, a little boy was probably negotiating for one more bedtime story about science and love, and families that grew stronger by growing different. And that, Robert thought, was the most beautiful experiment of all. Think about how Scarlett and Robert discovered that sometimes the happy ending isn't a passionate kiss, but two fulfilled parents watching their child grow up loved and secure. What does this teach us about different forms of love and unconventional, happy endings? Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.